What up, and welcome back to another Malazan Book of the Fallen video. This time we're doing something a little different. I'm recording Memories of Ice videos right now, but I wanted to just quickly do one and throw it out there to answer the question, what are people talking about when they tell you that Malazan is about empathy and compassion? This is going to be a spoiler-free video trying to get into what people mean for those of you considering jumping into the series. Let's get into it. So you hear all this stuff about the series, you're thinking about diving in, you're like, what is the series all about? And somebody tells you it's about empathy and compassion. Of course, you can go out and find a synopsis. We did a big synopsis challenge that gives spoiler-free kind of overviews of what the series is about, but I want to try and explain what I think people mean or why they tell you that when they say that the series is about empathy and compassion, because there's obviously a lot of other plot lines going on. There's empires and wars and gods and scheming and all that stuff. Again, check out all those synopses. So then why would they tell you that it's about empathy and compassion? And so I just want to explain kind of what I think people mean by that, because I think there's, two ways that come to mind, or that people are kind of channeling when they say that Malazan is about empathy and compassion. And the first one is, I think that you see it in kind of acts, individual acts, group acts, large and small, right? You see it in individual relationships. You see it in some of the plot lines. You see the kind of antithesis of empathy and compassion in other plot lines. We kind of get a lot of internal monologues where folks are really like kind of, connecting with other characters or really understanding the plight or something of the folks that they're interacting with, and really, on a visceral level or emotional level, kind of getting it, right? And I think you see a lot of that stuff in there. You see armies that are like respecting each other somehow, even as they're kind of enemies, and killing each other and observing these, rights and things like that. You get a lot of characters who meet and like have these deep understandings of one another because of kind of these shared experiences or the ability to connect with each other too. And so I think that there's just all of these different ways that you see it on this kind of interpersonal level, and it's weaved throughout the books, in addition to seeing the kind of the juxtaposition of the antithesis of stuff like that too. So there's that kind of interpersonal component to the empathy and compassion, where we see it in the way that folks are responding to each other in the books, and that is, in the themes that are developed there, etc. But then there's like a whole second part to it too, which I think is maybe the bigger reason why people offer that up as like a description when you say, what's it about? And they say empathy and compassion. And I think that boils down to the kind of meta nature of these books. It's called the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And so it's kind of got a meta component to it, if that makes sense, because it's written obviously as a book that we're going to go out and buy at Barnes & Noble and read like on Earth or whatever, but it's also like constructed as a book for somebody within that world to pick up and read, like, hundreds or thousands of years or whatever, maybe after the events that are actually going to be portrayed in the book that we're about to read as like human beings, right? And so it's about like the journey and the plight and the sacrifice of all of the characters that, are going to, appear in these books for the readers from that world much later on to kind of understand what happened. It's like a history, right, of this fantasy world or whatever that is meant to be picked up and read down the road by inhabitants of that world, with lessons for those folks. But then, once you get to the end of the 10 books as us readers, you can't help, and you kind of have digested the grand finale, and you understand all the conclusions, and you have that kind of perspective to look back on everything that you've read up to that point in the millions of words and pages and whatever that it takes to get through the 10 books, you can't help but realize that there's also like a fourth wall element to it, where he's kind of like tearing down the fourth wall and speaking directly to us. So he's obviously speaking to the people of that world and wants them to understand the sacrifice and the history and things like that. But one of the reasons why I think Erikson wrote these books is because he wants us to look more closely at what we're doing on our own world too, right? And to, look at our values and our policies and like draw that Venn diagram between like our actions, both on an individual and systemic like government level and policy and all of that, and say, like, here's our values on the one hand, and then here's our behavior, and what does that Venn diagram look like? How much of those circles are actually overlapping, right? And are we as compassionate and empathetic as we could be? Can we do better and stuff like that? And so I think that is just one of the kind of logical conclusions that folks are kind of grappling with when they get to the end of the Book of the Fallen series, and that is probably why it jumps to the fore when you ask them, what's Malazan all about? And they go, it's about empathy and compassion. And I think it's just a story where over the course, again, of millions of words and thousands of pages, that these questions are explored over and over again by different groups, by people and gods at an individual level, at a societal level, and they keep having to grapple with these. And you see folks that are successful at showing empathy and compassion and folks that aren't, right? And that there's the whole kind of plot of the books that's happening in the background, but that's kind of like the moral of the story, as it were, when you kind of reflect back on and contextualize all that delicious reading. So there's still like regular plots in every book, where there's like a beginning and an end, and characters and battles and wars and struggles and all of that stuff. There's lasers, there's fireballs, there's badass swords and demons and dragons and everything else that you're looking for in fantasy. And I think it does those to like a 10 or even arguably an 11. But that is what I think people mean, or that's the best way that I can describe for why I think people respond that way when you ask them what it's about. At least that's the kind of best way I could think to explain it to you, without kind of ruining your experience of enjoying this delicious series for yourself. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes you more interested in reading the books. If you like the video, like and subscribe. We got lots of cool Malazan content to help you through your first couple of books along the way, and got an even better community for you to be a part of. So rambled on long enough. I'll try and cut it down to keep it a little shorter. So see you in the Discord. Happy reading.